So the constants in Pakistan's approach are hostility towards India. Number one, they will not do anything to that. Another constant is that they don't really negotiate. And one of the other things, I haven't used those words, but I'm going to use them in this interview, is they are the biggest crybaby going. They complain about everything. None of the disputes has ever got resolved. All our disputes exist. And every decade, 2 more are added. And who better than Hindu India as an enemy? Played dirty. In 2016, in contravention of the treaty's terms, and that's why we were upset, Pakistan is a child of the British and laterly the Americans.
Given that this is Independence Week, this special episode of Books and Banter looks at one of the most consequential and enduring relationships in South Asia, India-Pakistan relations. Ambassador Satish Chandra's India-Pakistan relations, a saga of unending disputes, take us beyond the familiar focus on Kashmir to examine the many disputes that have shaped the relationship since partition. From Junagadh, Hyderabad, and Jammu and Kashmir to the Indus Water, Siachen, Sir Creek, and terrorism. With decades of diplomatic and strategic experience, including his tenure as India's High Commissioner to Pakistan and as Deputy National Security Advisor, Ambassador Chandra offers a perspective shaped by both scholarship and experience at the negotiating table. This conversation is particularly relevant today. As India marked another Independence Day, Pakistan-administered Jammu and Kashmir is witnessing political unrest over governance, economic grievances, and political representation. The developments raise an important question. What does the Kashmir question look like when viewed not through the India-Pakistan prism, but through the voices and aspirations of those living on the other side of the line of control? In this special episode, we explore why India-Pakistan disputes have remained so persistent, how Pakistan's strategic culture has shaped the relationship, whether terrorism has fundamentally altered the possibilities for dialogue, and what the current developments in POK could mean for the future of the Kashmir question. Welcome to a Dialogus Digital Original series. Sir, it is an honor to have you with us today. So you call the book a saga of unending disputes. Why unending? Is the problem that India and Pakistan have been unable to resolve individual disputes, or that the two countries have never really agreed on the terms of their relationship?
It's actually both. But before I say that, let me thank you for having invited me to be on your show. It's a pleasure for me to come, and I'll attempt to answer your questions honestly and frankly. But before doing that, I think it's important for your audience to know that, your viewers, why did I write this book?
Certainly.
And the reason that this book was written is because I found while working on Pakistan, and I've been working in different capacities on Pakistan for about 25% of my career, 6 of which were spent in Pakistan and 4 or 5 at headquarters, that there is no one book which encapsulates most of our issues, differences, and disputes. And I have looked at about 18 of these in that book.
Right.
So this is one of a kind book because most books are either a history of India-Pakistan relations or are issue specific, whether it is Kashmir or Siachen or there are a lot of books written on it, a great deal of literature.
Right.
So what I attempted to do in this book is to present to the reader, both the layman and the specialist, about what each of these disputes is all about, giving a brief history of these disputes, and it is unabashedly an Indian narrative.
Certainly, you're a practitioner. So
No,
Indian
not only
perspective.
that, no, why I was compelled to do this is because I find that very often, for one reason or another, many who write on Pakistan from this side try to see 7 sides of the issue or 8 sides of the issue, but the Indian narrative gets lost.
Right.
So what I have done in this book is to provide the Indian narrative, and I found this while I was dealing with Pakistan as a very big gap, that when you wanted to know about an issue, say Siachen or the Indus Waters Treaty,
Right.
you had to either read through reams and reams of documents, or it just wasn't there. So this book attempts to fill that gap, to tell the reader about each of these disputes. Some are very major, like Kashmir. Some are even funny and very minor, like Jinnah House.
Right.
Or things like the Durand line, on which we don't look at, but which is important.
Very important.
So it covers a fair section. Now, to answer your question, what is the relationship? Is it the disputes? Is it something else? None of the disputes has ever got resolved. All our disputes exist. And every decade, 2 more are added, or 3 more are added. So this game will continue, and there are reasons for that as to why they are not solved. But I have quoted, looking at documents, Lok Sabha speeches, one by Nehru in April 1958, where he himself acknowledged that you may even resolve issues like canal waters, which was a big thing at that time, or some of the other issues. But the obsessive hatred that is there in Pakistan, which is cultivated, will always be a problem.
It's ingrained.
Ingrained.
Yeah.
Shastri said the same thing more or less, more succinctly, in April 1965 during the Kutch conflict. And Jaswant Singh wrote a book a few years ago, before he passed away, that this is an induced hostility that is there in Pakistan, and Pakistan has found it useful. Their leaders have found it useful for a variety of reasons to cultivate persistent hostility towards India,
Right.
with different purposes. Now, the first instance of it that I am aware of was in a book written by B.K. Nehru in the 90s, called Nice Guys Finish Last, or something like that. In that, he relates an incident. He went there in 1948, and this was on financial issues, and the discussions were successful.
Right.
And they came to a conclusion. But he was very upset because every morning in the newspaper there was virulent anti-Indian sentiments being expressed in the media. So in those days, the ICS officers who were there on both sides, he knew the Pakistan cabinet secretary, who was an ICS officer like he was.
Right.
And in the evening over drinks, he lashed out at him, at the cabinet secretary, Pakistan cabinet, saying, you know, I'm very upset. Every day there is this nonsense in your papers. Why are you doing this? These discussions have succeeded.
Yeah.
So he said, have another drink, but let me explain it to you. You know, we need an enemy. And who better than Hindu India as an enemy? So B.K. Nehru asked him, he said, how long do you need this enemy? So he said, 5 or 6 years. And the book is written in 1997 or 96, sometimes there. He says this enmity continues. Now, that was in the early years.
Right.
By about the mid-50s, 60s, the Pakistan army actually started ruling Pakistan directly and through remote.
Correct.
And they needed an enemy to remain in power. So, in my assessment, you can do anything. You can give them Kashmir. You can even give them New Delhi. This will not sort out anything with Pakistan because they have a vested interest in hostility towards India. It's much worse now than it was I've served there twice. I have been in Pakistan as a very junior officer from 69 to the 71 conflict in Karachi. And then later as High Commissioner from 95 till the end of 98.
Right.
And now what one finds is this hostility is ingrained in the youth, not only through media but in textbooks.
I think this hostility is also important for their survival
वही मैं कह रहा हूँ.
as a nation.
Exactly the same thought. So that is the problem that is there with Pakistan, and you can have peace talks, you can do all sorts of things, there will be talks, you may have some temporary papering over, but the hostility will continue, and this is the way it will continue on and on and on as long as Pakistan exists in its present form.
Right.
So that is a problem. There's one other thing which I think it will be useful for me to mention, which I have touched upon in the book, and that is the constants through these disputes. After analyzing all these 17 or 18 disputes,
18, yeah.
through these I have teased out the constants in Pakistan's approach towards India and the constants in India's approach towards Pakistan. So the constants in Pakistan's approach are hostility towards India. Number one, they will not do anything to do that. Another constant is that they don't really negotiate. They put a maximal agenda. And if you don't reach that agenda, the dispute doesn't remain. I mean, it can't be solved.
Yeah, it can be solved. It remains.
It remains. And I'll give you an example. Take the Indus Waters Treaty, in which India was very accommodative. During the negotiations, Pakistan said that any accretion of water that comes as a result of the treaty should be weighted in favor of Pakistan 10:1 vis-a-vis India. Then there was a question of demand for water. The total flows are about 180 million acre feet of the total Indus Basin flows. They said our requirement is 508 million acres. I mean,
Yeah.
At the same time, the Farakka barrage thing was also going on. Pakistan, out of the 55,000 cusecs, Pakistan said we need 49,000 cusecs. So they have a maximal agenda.
Maximum.
We try to accommodate, and the Indus Waters Treaty is a classic example where, in an effort to win over Pakistan, we accepted only 20% of the flows of the Indus waters.
Right.
Pakistan got 80%. By right, we should have got well over 40% because of things like the length of the rivers in India, the catchment area in India, the fact that 67% of the waters of the entire Indus Basin arise in India.
Right.
No upper riparian would ever make such a concession. And yet they cry. So this is the second thing, they don't negotiate. They put a maximal agenda, India tries to keep accommodating and ends up getting Nothing.
But since they will never be happy with it,
They'll never be
so
happy with
the
that
disputes continue.
So, that is another feature of this, that they don't negotiate. Another feature is double standards. There are double standards on everything. They won't accept the boundary on Sir Creek, which was fixed in 1913 in British times,
British time.
or the Kutch boundary, which was fixed also in British times. But they say the Durand line must be observed. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. The same thing. When we respond to terrorism, and this has been said by Fazlur Rahman 3 days ago or 2 days ago, I'm told, in Pakistan. He said that, look, we are attacking Afghanistan supposedly for export of terror by the Afghans. By the same standards, what is wrong if the Indians attack Pakistan, as they have done after Sindoor?
Right.
Double standard. So everywhere there is a double standard. And one of the other things, I haven't used those words, but I'm going to use them in this interview, is they are the biggest crybaby going. They complain about everything. I mean, they said they are cheated at partition because, they got a truncated Pakistan. It is truncated, but they asked for it. They then complain and they tell such lies, it's not funny. In 1948, we, for a very short period of time, cut off supplies on the Ravi River at Madhopur headworks.
Right.
Because Pakistan had not renewed a standstill agreement, which we concluded with them in September 47, saying that, look, in April or by the end of March, you must do this. Otherwise, this water there'll be a problem. We sent reminders, they didn't do it. So the government of East Punjab and Madhopur, they put some stoppage, and for 6 days or 10 days, water was stopped.
Okay.
And then, of course, there were meetings and it was revived.
Right.
Pakistan for several years kept telling the world that India has cut off all Pakistan's water. I mean, this is the sort of garbage that there's a crybaby mentality. You keep crying, accusing India of things India hasn't done. So, this is another. So, I have mentioned some of these many constants which are there.
It's the characteristic of
Pakistan. There are
Pakistan's
several
approach to
others
India.
which our readers would be interested in. But on India's side, by the same token, there has been appeasement, consistent appeasement. Why did we are a bigger country, Jammu and Kashmir to the UN? Why did we agree to mediation of the World Bank for Indus Waters? We got the raw end of the deal and we made concessions everywhere. I mentioned earlier that we have a defensive mindset, that we don't press our own case. Take Kashmir. We took it to the UN, but we took it under Chapter 6, which is peaceful settlement of disputes. Not Chapter 7, which is aggression. And what did we ask for? We only asked that, withdraw these people and stop the aggression. Whereas we should have demanded, as was our right, of condemnation of Pakistan for aggression and imposition of sanctions. हमने पूछा ही नहीं.
हाँ, that's true.
तो ये सब जगह हमारा ये Indus Waters Treaty, we actually did not ask for 40% of the water. We asked for 25.6% of the waters. We got 20%. They asked for 94% of the waters. They got 80%. But, there's something wrong with us, I'm afraid. This constant accommodation, there has been a change during the Modi government, though they continued in the same vein in the earlier years. The Prime Minister invited Nawaz Sharif and he came for that inauguration.
oath ceremony.
ceremony, and then he made that visit. But after that, they changed it. The surgical strikes took place, and then Balakot, and then, of course, Sindoor. So this government has changed the stance, and which is good. And they have also gone further. They said that, look, if there is more of this, every act of terrorism will have some repercussions.
Yeah.
What they are is another story. But so there has been a change, and this is the only time consistently over years this has been there. And I'm very glad of what we have done in terms of keeping the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance. That is essential. A better stance would have been that we are out of the Indus Waters Treaty, but at least this is something, this is a start.
Which is legally allowed to step out
yes,
of
you
the
see,
treaty.
the stepping out of the treaty actually was so badly negotiated. Most treaties have a cut-off date, like the Ganga Waters Treaty with Bangladesh has 2026 this year. We have to conclude it. I mean, it is up for renewal. This is a treaty in perpetuity until you conclude another treaty. And with Pakistan, you cannot conclude any treaty because they won't allow it. And they won't come to any understanding with you. So the treaty continues. But under international law, the Vienna Convention does provide, I think it's Article 62 or something like that. It provides that if the circumstances under which the treaty were negotiated change fundamentally, then you have a case to get out of the treaty. The argument in our case is very simple, though it hasn't been trotted out as such, but I will say it in terms of change, because I had consulted some lawyers in this on 2002 or 2003 when I was in NSCS, and they said that, look, in the treaty, it is meant to be for peace and understanding and goodwill and so on. All that is written in the preamble. All that has changed because there is a consistent export of terrorism.
Right.
So if there is terrorism, then you have every right to get out of the treaty. That is the angle that we have now said. That's why we are holding it in abeyance until such time as they change their position on terrorism. But there are other factors also now. Because in fact we had given them notice even before Pahalgam. I think in 23 itself it started. Through 24 we served 4 notices on them for a renegotiation. The first 2 notices were in regard to the settlement of issues on them, because what Pakistan did, why the Indus Waters Treaty is so bad from our point of view, is what they did, that any project that we were permitted under the treaty, they delayed it by sending it to first neutral experts, then court of arbitration. When we sent it to neutral expert, they sent it to court of arbitration. The whole game went on. For projects were delayed by decades.
Wow. Some
were cancelled. I mean, when I was a joint secretary, one of the projects which we had, which was a very small project, over 20 kilometers from Sopore to Baramulla on the Jhelum. 20 kilometers, it was just a little lock we were putting to raise the water level to about 4 feet so that timber could be floated down the river. You know, it's important for the Kashmiri. They objected to that also. And ultimately, I don't know, I think we should have pushed through on it further and done it irrespective of what they did. That project also got cancelled, but many others were more seriously affected. And what the World Bank did, played dirty. In 2016, in contravention of the treaty's terms, and that's why we were upset, what they did is they sent it, the same issue, to a neutral expert and a court of arbitration. And we objected. We said the treaty states that when it is with a neutral expert, it doesn't go to court simultaneously at the same time. And the World Bank in a press release admitted it, but in 2022 or 23 they did it again to satisfy the Pakistanis. And that's why I feel that having the World Bank in these games was very wrong on our part because, look, let's face it, what is happening internationally, and that's not new, is that this is Pakistan. I won't use a bad term, but I'll just be diplomatic. Pakistan is a child of the British and laterly the Americans. And
right.
they bless it. They will turn their eyes totally away from any wrongdoing by that country, including what is happening in POJK today.
Right.
It isn't in the Western media. I mean, had something like that happened in India, you can imagine what would be happening. Not happening because they are not, this is their child. So, we should not have got into any arrangements on Indus Waters with World Bank mediation.
Yeah.
Why do that? Does China get into these treaties on the Brahmaputra with the World Bank vis-a-vis us? They just swallow all the water without anything. So, we have been at fault in terms of being overly accommodative of that country. And the West is very happy that, and you've seen over the last 1 year, there's been a consistent undermining of India by the Trump administration.
So one of the key observations, in your reviews that have come out is that the book is unusual because it goes beyond Kashmir and brings in lesser discussed issues such as Junagadh, Hyderabad, Kalat, Northwest Frontier Province, and evacuee property and Jinnah House. Why was it important to revisit these seemingly smaller disputes to understand the larger India-Pakistan relationship?
No, as I said, it was important for several reasons. One is to tease out the constants in the policy.
Right, you mentioned.
I mean, you mentioned now Junagadh and Kashmir. In the case of Junagadh, double standards. In the case of Junagadh, they said that since Junagadh has acceded to Pakistan, it is Pakistan. But Kashmir acceded to India, it's not India. I mean, this is the double standard. The same issue with Kalat. Kalat had been promised independence by Jinnah. In fact, Jinnah was their lawyer.
Yeah.
He backed on it and he took it over. Another thing is Pakistan, another constant. Pakistan disregards all agreements. He had standstill agreements. Pakistan had standstill agreements with Kalat and with Kashmir. It violated both.
Right.
It violated the Shimla agreement with India, time and again. So, I mean, the idea of going into some of these, as I call it, there are differences, issues, disputes, you call it whatever you like. But they reveal a constant perversion on the part of Pakistan and a constant accommodation by India or appeasement by India, depending on how you want to put it, which I find hard to accept. I think we should never have done that. So that's why I looked at many of these issues, and also I think for a student, as well as for the specialist, it's important to have in one place a very concise idea of each of these. One other thing which impelled me to do this, which is that younger generations forget many things. Naturally, you don't blame them. What happened during Partition, which is a whole chapter on it, actually 2 chapters on it. One is minorities, of the complete elimination of Hindus and Sikhs from West Pakistan. That happened, which people have forgotten about. And I have written about it because I have first-hand knowledge. I am from that part of the world. I was born in Lahore. I belong to Multan. I speak Saraiki still. Wow. And when I was High Commissioner there, they would not allow me to speak in English. They said, let's speak in our own language, which I did. ISI didn't like it because they couldn't follow it properly. But I have links of that sort.
Yeah.
But our people here, the younger generation doesn't know. I mean, my children, grandchildren don't remember anything of that sort.
True.
So what happened to those people who came, the circumstances in which they came, how much suffering was inflicted on those people, and to an extent, I think partition also was a fault of our own leaders, I mean by Indian leaders. I think really we should never have accepted it. And it wrought havoc. It wrought havoc. Since you are from Calcutta, in East Pakistan, it also happened, but not to that extent initially. What's happened in East Pakistan, in a sense, is worse. Actually, in Bengal is worse. Because in West Pakistan, it was all over in 2 years or 3 years. It was a complete exodus.
Yeah.
What happened in East Pakistan, it was an ooze. 100,000, 200,000, 10 million in 1971.
Yeah, 70s it picked up.
But even during Sheikh Hasina's time, there was movement. And it is a consistent ooze that has happened. The Hindus and the minorities have been driven out and still are in now Bangladesh. So that problem has continued. From the West, all the people who had to go away, I mean, most of them went away. And it was a sudden, brutal thing. And the cost of it, if you take into account what happened in Bangladesh, according to a scholar, Mr. Sharma, he says the total movement of people over the entire period was 25 million. And the total number of deaths was 2.5 million. If you take just 47, 48, 49, 50, it was 1.5 million dead and 15 million who moved. So this is the extent of tragedy that happened, and we don't know about it, people. So this book tries to capture it, and I have some authentic records on it which are not yet published, because my father was a senior civil servant in 47 in Lahore.
Wow.
And he was asked to come to Delhi by the then government in India before partition. So we came in June 47. And he was asked to come to tackle the problem of refugees. And here again, why I say that we also erred. Once partition was decided on, my father advised the then leadership at the highest levels in India that from West Pakistan, you should mobilize all transport and get everyone out quickly, because terrible things are going to happen there.
Right.
And the government was not receptive. They said, this is what Jinnah wants. Let the people stay. And even Mahatma Gandhi and others, the word till around September 47 was let people stay. Now this invited a disaster, because the longer you stayed, the more endangered you were. Had all transport been mobilized at that time, perhaps the tragedy would have been less. Yes, the displacement would be there, but lives may have been saved. So this was a mistake that was made by the then leadership for whatever reasons. That's another story. But that again I have recorded, and this is from my own father's records of the time, which I happen to have.
Slightly digressing from the narration, since you mentioned that you have access to such primary documents, as an author, when you had to choose your research methodology, did you feel in an advantageous position, or did you feel burdened that how sensitive it would be to kind of analyze this and publish it?
No, my approach actually, and I openly acknowledge it, and I've said as much, I think. I did not do deep research like some of you have done in terms of your thesis. I actually laid my hands on whatever material is more or less commonly available.
Right.
I got some original documents which were published also. Avtar Singh Bhasin has done a late Avtar Singh Bhasin, he was a research
Right.
officer. He's done a signal service in writing, in collating documentation on India, Pakistan, not only India, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh,
Yeah,
Sri
the
Lanka,
neighborhood.
China, everywhere.
Yes.
And so he's a friend of, and so IIC, I got hold of that book and so on. And I used it. And in fact, my quotations on Nehru and Lal Bahadur Shastri are from those records.
Right.
And some others also. He himself has written some things. So I used a lot of open material. The only two areas in which unpublished, more or less unpublished records are there is because I have rather yellowed pages of some notes which had been kept by my father and some talks that he had given at that time, and I'm talking of 48, 49, including on this partition, evacuee property, things like that, because he was dealing with that.
It must be very precious.
So those I have, and actually the Nehru Memorial Library has asked for my records. I said, I am a very simple man. My father had some records which I'll give you, but my daughter is not allowing it yet because she is writing a book on my father's memoirs. So she said, till I finish, I want those records. I said, okay. Ladies rule the roost. So I said, ठीक है भाई, जो आप चाहते हैं.
Coming back to your book, one of the strongest arguments running through your book is that Pakistan has repeatedly approached India through what might be described as the security-centric or adversarial lens. Since you mentioned about the constants, how deeply do you think is embedded in their orientation in Pakistan's strategic culture? Touching upon my thesis topic.
No, their strategic culture, I referred to it earlier in this talk, is really their need for an enemy. This dates back to 47, 48. And this got further strengthened as a means of the Pakistan army to maintain themselves in power. I mean, if you look at Pakistan, it's a relatively small country maintaining a huge army with nuclear weapons and constantly rearming itself, and with the singular focus on armament to the detriment of their own population. If it had good relations with India, assume that things were good with India, what is the need for this armament? I mean, in our own case also, it would be much lower.
Yeah.
And in fact, till 1962, we were spending very little on the military.
Yeah.
In fact, Nehru had poo-pooed the idea even of having a strong defense. Against whom? Pakistan's army, to retain power, has to have an enemy, Indian bogey. That is there. And everything else is dictated by that. Actually, they have a single point foreign policy. Indian bogey, undermine India. By whatever means necessary, you have to ally and sell yourselves to the Chinese or the Americans or both, or anybody else, so long as we can do India down. And I can just tell you a story about this, an anecdote. When I was High Commissioner in Pakistan, talking to friends on terrorism, I casually mentioned, I said, your keeping and cultivating these terrorist groups is going to hurt you. It's not a good idea, because ultimately if you nurture these groups, they will at some point in time hurt you also. So he said, as long as they bring you down, that's okay.
That clarity was there.
That clarity. He said, until you meet our requirements, we will meet in the means given to all our demands. So that thought process And the hatred of India, you've read Mr. Dixit's books and other books which have many anecdotes, I won't go into them, of the amount of hatred that there is at a visceral level, I mean school children, etc.
So it's kind of embedded from a very young age. You don't have to be in an official position to understand what is your emotion towards India.
And you know, the other thing is, it reflects itself, and I mentioned this in the book also. They make issues out of things which are not issues.
Right.
I mean, on Sir Creek, you know, the difference in boundary is maybe a few kilometers. I mean, on the creek itself, there's hardly a difference. Uska bhi issue kar rahe ho. I mean, what is the reason for that? And actually, they suffer because of that. I mean, if you look at it rationally, take Jammu and Kashmir. You know, in innumerable talks, bilaterally, we have offered them plebiscite in one form or another. We have even offered them additional territory which they haven't taken. During the Swaran Singh Bhutto talks in 1963, about 2,000 or 1,500 square miles of territory we were ready to give away of the area of Jammu and Kashmir currently occupied by us, in addition to what they had taken earlier. So we were ready to do these deals. But they said, no, you can keep a little bit of Jammu, the rest we must have. This is maximalist agenda.
This is the maximalist agenda. Since you touched upon the maximalist agenda and India always, appeasing, trying to please them, India has repeated to try dialogue, confidence building measures and economic engagement. Why have these efforts often failed to produce a sustained change in Pakistan's behavior?
No, as I say, the reason is that they don't want a change.
Do you think it would keep them relevant and they know it?
They don't want a change. They want a hostility because that's how they sustain itself.
At what point did Kashmir cease to be primarily a territorial dispute and become inseparable from the question of terrorism?
Look, terrorism has been a constant in Pakistan's policy towards India, even before Pakistan was created. The call for direct action by Jinnah, which I think took place on 16th August 46,
Okay.
was based on terrorism. So it predates Pakistan, and Kashmir was an entirely terrorist operation. Since then, they have engaged in terrorism vis-a-vis India, not only in Kashmir. They've done it in the northeast. They gave shelter to groups from the northeast in the 50s. I've covered that in my book. Khalistan movement, totally supported by them. Terrorism in India from Pakistan is pan-India. It's not only Kashmir. And I am aware from my subsequent assignment in government in NSCS that there are sleeper cells as of today everywhere in India. I mean, in all major cities. Delhi, you saw it. It's not new.
It's not new.
So terrorism is a means to undermine India, and their objective is to undermine you in every possible way. Terrorism is one, open action which they have done time and again, whether it was in Kutch or in Kashmir, is by many other means. Counterfeit currency is another thing.
Yeah.
Huge amounts of it. And I'm glad finally we are going in for plastic currency, which I had recommended 25 years ago. Because the paper that we get for our currency is from the same company which does Pakistani currency also. We have been a little bit remiss in all this. But Pakistan has been consistent. Give them credit.
Yeah.
From day one, their objective is to down you.
Right.
So that is a clear approach.
If I were to bring our discussion to the contemporary developments, we are seeing this renewed unrest in the Pakistan administered Jammu and Kashmir. According to you, would you say that these are essentially economic protests, or are we beginning to see a political change to the existing order?
It's both. It is started off, I think, as economic. Uh, for instance, the rates on power that the Kashmiris have to pay is more than elsewhere in Pakistan, though the power is generated there.
Right.
And everything else is more expensive. Development has not been there. And discontent actually in POJK is not new, even political discontent. There's a very nice book written by a colleague of mine, Dinkar Srivastav, called Forgotten Kashmir, which is about this, and he refers to the Sudan revolt, Sudan tribe, which revolted in the early 50s. And that is the reason why Pakistan never went for plebiscite in Jammu and Kashmir, because they would have lost it, because those people were really not interested. So this anger is there. The only thing is that now it has come to a pitch, there are tipping points.
Right.
So this has reached a tipping point, because now it has got a political factor, because there are the 12 nominated seats from the rest of Pakistan, which are allegedly people who migrated from this part of Jammu and Kashmir. So, it has got a political color, because they are nominated, they are anyone that the government wants, basically. I mean, and the elections in any case have always been a sham. And what has aggravated is the heavy-handed manner in which the Pakistan army is dealing with it. So in a discussion today, which I was working with in the morning, in fact, Pakistan is going through a terrible phase internally. Balochistan has been in revolt. This is the 5th or 6th revolt in Balochistan since 47-48.
Right.
It's out of control. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is also in flames because of the TTP factor. And now you've got this. So everywhere there is trouble.
And economic is broken throughout.
You know that. So the point basically, I mean, look how India shines in contrast. We've had insurgencies which have been promoted from without. In Pakistan's case, these are all internally brought about because of misgovernance. They have bombed their people in Balochistan. Time and again. They use F-16s for dealing with them. You see how the Indian armed forces have dealt with the similar situations in India, whether it was in Punjab or this. Yes, force was used, but it was proportionate. We didn't use MiG-21s to bomb our people.
That's true.
So, I mean, and the West is blind to all this, and this is why I say I have no respect for friends in the West or organizations like Amnesty International. These are pseudo human rights organizations. They are totally biased against India and tilted towards Pakistan. So they will ignore it to the extent they can.
Your book suggests that the disputes are not simply unresolved because diplomats have failed to find clever solutions. Is the real problem that the two sides are fundamentally incompatible with strategic objectives?
No, look, as far as India is concerned, and I think it's true even today, should Pakistan be half reasonable? And by half reasonable, I say give up the use of terrorism against India. We will be ready for settlements, and we have a history of being very generous. I mean, even in the case of Pakistan, if you take it, I mean, what could be more generous than an Indus Waters Treaty as concluded, as I explained?
Right. You mentioned.
So, I mean, we have been, and even in the case of Kashmir, we did not ask for sanctions again, I mean, when we took it to the UN. And that's what we should have done. But so the effort to meet them, and look, I know this more than many others because I have negotiated with Pakistan. And there is a very strong urge for having a better relationship, and people like me who are from that area, who speak that language, who know people or have known people there, we would like a good relationship. Culturally, there is nothing. I mean, Delhi, Lahore is very similar culturally. So there is that bond that is there. But then if you are going to have to face terrorism all the time, I don't see why we should have anything to do with Pakistan. I would go further in how to deal with Pakistan. My approach to Pakistan is actually more aggressive than that of our government. What I would do is that I would, in fact,
Since you mentioned about what would you have done in such a situation, suppose you had to advise New Delhi today, would you prioritize dialogue, deterrence, economic isolation, people-to-people engagement, or carefully calibrated between these, or done all four?
no, I won't do any of them.
What would you have done, sir?
No, you see, I'll be very logical.
Okay.
If your logic and my logic is that no dialogue is going to help since it's in an inimical mode towards you, then you have to think of ways and means to see that Pakistan doesn't exist in the form it exists today.
Right.
Now, this doesn't mean war, because today war in a nuclear environment
It's not
is suicidal.
possible. Yeah.
And I don't think we would like to commit suicide. So the approach towards, as I see it, is to ensure and facilitate the process which is already there in Pakistan, which is towards complete disintegration. I mentioned
Right.
Baluchistan is in revolt, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is in flames, and POJK is headed in that direction. That only leaves the Punjab. And even Punjab, there are breakaway thoughts in the area from which I originally hail from, which is the Multan area, the Saraiki belt. They want secession also. I mean, away from Punjab. So there is all over the place, there is instability. So I think the government is correct in its approach of saying that dialogue and terrorism can't go together. They are right. But as I said, I would be a little more proactive in facilitating the process that is on in Pakistan without moving a single soldier, without doing anything, unless we are attacked. That, of course, then the entire game changes.
Given that it is going to be unending disputes for a few more decades at least. To wrap up this conversation on a positive note, would you say that there is still a constituency for peace within Pakistan capable of influencing state policy, which could change its approach towards India?
A lot of my friends in my service argue along those lines. And in fact, many years ago, a former senior, a boss of mine, also when I felt that certain moves we were making towards Pakistan were not called for, suggested to me that there is a constituency for peace.
Right.
I doubt it. And I doubt it because the extent of brainwashing is so much there. Mm-hmm. The establishment is so much in control that nothing will change. And the younger generation, I don't have much hopes on them. I don't blame them because they've been brainwashed. How would you react if every day in the newspapers and in the channels on Indian TV you were fed with hate Bangladesh, Pakistan news, you would hate it.
Subconsciously, my mind would be affected
And
irrespective of what
it's
I
taught in
read.
schools and colleges.
Yeah.
So how would you react? You would react that way. So that's how they are. And you have to recognize it. I see really no hope in our relationship.
On that note, thank you so much for having this conversation with us.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.